Hello everyone, welcome to my Resident Evil Code Veronica X no damage walkthrough, and this is the Antarctic Basis Chris, and this is the final part of the game, and it's incredibly easy because you have so much ammo. You have a lot of pistol rounds, you have a lot of shotgun rounds, you have a lot of grenade launcher rounds. I mean, the shotgun in particular, you've amassed so many shotgun shells at this point that the pistol is almost completely useless. So, I really shouldn't have taken the pistol with me. If I didn't take the pistol with me, I would have a lot more space to pick up a lot of items. But this room right here, just shoot all the zombies with the shotgun. I choose to get very creative, and I try to run past a lot of these zombies, and it does work. But it's kind of tricky to pull off, especially when these zombies have the ability to fire a moth parasite at you if you decide to quick turn immediately. But what I do is I move forward, and then I quick turn to get past this zombie, and then this zombie I managed to get past, he's completely random. It's random where he's going to be. So that's why I recommend using the shotgun just to get rid of those zombies. But now that that's done, we're going to be able to gain access to a room we could not access previously as Claire, because she was not able to get to this part of the room thanks to the broken walkway. And there is a drone, and getting past this drone is so hard to do. It's very specific on the movement. You have to kind of hold left on the D-pad during the loading screen, and then you've got to sprint. If you turn too much to the left, you'll run into the wall, and the drone will spot you. So that's why I got spotted just then, but thankfully the grenade launcher really helps in getting rid of that hunter. But don't run after the hunter, just let the hunters come to you. It's better to do that, because if they decide to do the jump attack, they will dodge the grenade launcher, and they will be able to catch you very quickly if you get caught in the recovery frames of the grenade launcher. But go ahead and use the octavalve to turn on the power. And by turning on the power, we have now gained access to a couple of rooms. But eventually we're going to have to return to this room and turn off the power so that we can gain access to several key items that will allow us to gain access to another room later on. But that's after we fight the first one of Alexia. But I'm just going to put the pistol away, and I'm just going to finally showcase the shotgun's capabilities. It's hard to believe that they've introduced the shotgun so late into the game. We're just now getting the chance to use it. And it's the same with the Magnum. We only ever gain access to the Magnum in this final part of the game. And the Magnum is honestly underutilized so much. I mean, the only time I ever use the Magnum is against the giant spider boss and against one sweeper. I was able to actually kill the first form of Alexia using the knife only, which was absolutely awesome. And the fact that that fight has an autosave is wonderful, so that I don't have to constantly retry from the manual save that I made from the typewriter. And I know it sounds like a very risky strategy to do, but it's actually really, really helpful. I mean, the only alternative method you could possibly do against Alexia in their first form is just use the Magnum on her. The Magnum will absolutely destroy her. I think it takes roughly 5 to 6 shots from the Magnum just to finish her off. And there's actually Magnum ammo on the right-hand side of this statue if you decide to pick up the red jewel. But I just chose not to pick up the red jewel because I didn't think I was going to use the Magnum whatsoever. And you can pick up the Magnum ammo if you want to. It's entirely your choice. But this section here is really dumb. So, the shotgun is an absolute necessity for this section, or you can use the submachine gun. So, these ants only do 1 damage to your character, but on a no-damage walkthrough, you have to not take damage from these enemies. So, you've got to kill off every single ant that is on the ground. And this cutscene is so stupid. You will take damage immediately after this cutscene ends if you didn't decide to shoot those ants, which is honestly bullcrap. There is no reason for this cutscene to exist. Like, I would actually appreciate this nest if it gave me the option to press X on it. I don't want a cutscene putting me in a vulnerable position where I'm just going to immediately take damage afterwards from a stupid ant. And you might not care so much because the ants do very little damage, as I've already mentioned, but on a no-damage walkthrough, it's especially annoying. And I originally assumed that the ants were infinite. Like, they would just constantly repopulate the floor every single time you tried to kill them, and you had to walk, shoot, walk, shoot. Well, it turns out that's not the case. The ants aren't infinite. They respawn in the hallway if you decide to re-enter the room. So, you have to make sure you're not wasting too much ammo. And one of the tips I definitely recommend is standing at a very far distance, and then shooting your shotgun at stomach height. Because the conical spread of the shotgun will hit these ants at a very long distance. If you're close to these ants, you have to aim down. Just do whatever you can to make sure that these ants do not touch you. And you're going to waste a lot of shotgun ammo, but it doesn't really matter because there's not really a lot of opportunities to use a shotgun except against normal zombies. And also against the final boss fight, because the final boss fight, the shotgun is necessary to get rid of the babies that Alexia spawns. And you only really need 7 shotgun shells. That's really it, or less. Like, I think 1 shotgun shell is more than sufficient enough, because I actually discovered that the explosive bolts that the bowgun fires can actually stun lock Alexia and prevent her from spawning more babies, aside from the one that's mandatory. Like, she spawns 1 baby that is mandatory, and then if you repeatedly fire into her and keep her stun locked, she can't spawn any more babies. And not only that, but you can also prevent Alexia from doing her acid attack, so you can definitely tell that the explosive bolts are the best way to go when it comes to killing Alexia, because they have the highest DPS out of any other weapon in this game. Now, when it comes to the babies, they're not really the best choice, because aiming down with the explosive bolts with the bowgun is not very helpful when it comes to getting rid of enemies that are very fast when it comes to closing the distance to you. So, you obviously want to use the shotgun against the babies, and you can also use the submachine gun, or maybe the grenade launcher. I think those 2 other weapons might actually be sufficient against the babies. But we have now gained access to the Magnum, and I'm going to use the Magnum to kill this upcoming sweeper that will bust through the window when I decide to pick up the crane key. I'm also going to use it against the giant spider, and you can choose to use the Magnum against the first form of Alexia, but I chose not to do it for this video because I wanted to demonstrate how easy it is to do the first form of Alexia knife only. And I say easy, it actually is kind of challenging if you're not reading your movements correctly. But here it is. I'm going to pick up the crane key. Make sure you're facing in this direction so that you can immediately hit the sweeper when it busts through the window. If you don't kill the sweeper, and you just make a mad dash for the ladder, it will go back through the window, and it will attack you. But there goes the sweeper, and we're just going to make our way back to that frozen area that allowed us to gain access to this area. And we're going to kill the giant spider. And the giant spider dies in like 5 Magnum shots. But I make a mistake here. I fired the Magnum too early, so I end up missing a shot. See right there? I missed my first shot because I fired it too fast. And now I can't finish this guy off, so I'm going to have to swap to the shotgun, and this will kill it in 1 hit. And there you go. And that right there is a clear example of how a Magnum is supposed to feel in a Resident Evil game. And it's such a shame that there are other Resident Evil games that don't really have good Magnums. Like Resident Evil 1 Remake. I remember how useful the Magnum could be in certain situations, but then other times the Magnum was just absolute garbage. Like, you know Yawn from Resident Evil 1 Remake? Like, unleashing a full barrage of Magnum rounds just wasn't enough to finish it off. Like, you would expect the Magnum to finish it off in, like, 5 shots, but it took at least 12 shots from the Magnum to finish off Yawn. And I know this because I tried to use the Magnum against Yawn in one of my live streams, and it just didn't kill Yawn, which was so stupid. And Resident Evil 2 Remake, the Magnum on that game is very underpowered, and the game is just designed around knife only, that there's never really a need to use the Magnum. And the fact that you need to upgrade the Magnum to actually make it feel like a pretty decent weapon just seems kind of dumb to me. Because, I mean, in the other Resident Evil games, the weapon upgrades made the guns ridiculous, but the original versions of the weapons were still pretty good. So the fact that you have to apply the weapon parts to the Magnum in Resident Evil 2 Remake to actually make them feel on par with the unupgraded versions of the Magnums in the older Resident Evil games just is so confusing to me. But I'm taking the time to put in the jewels inside of this wall, and the final jewel that we need is Alexia's Choker, and you can only get Alexia's Choker after you finish her first form off. And there's also a knife in this room if you didn't bring a knife with you. And the reason for this is because we need the knife to free Claire, and Claire's actually in this room. And once we free Claire, we're going to be playing as her in a 2 to 3 minute section. And thankfully, at the beginning of Claire's section, you get a checkpoint. So if you die, you respawn at the beginning of Claire's section, which is really nice. Because Claire's section can be pretty challenging for new players. Because there's a sequence where you have to run away from an infected Steve. And Steve is really good at catching a lot of people out. And be careful of these tentacles. Do not try to turn your back to the tentacle and then just run away, because for some reason, when your back is to this particular tentacle, your hitbox is extended, so the tentacle can actually hit you at the same range that I was at when I triggered the tentacle, and I don't understand why. And make sure you kill that one zombie, because you don't want to accidentally run into that zombie when you return to this area as Chris. But grab the security file, and then we are going to use this dead trap over here to gain access to this card that for some reason is inside of a glass ball. I have no idea how they managed to get a card inside of a glass ball, or why they even thought about doing it like this, or why they even considered putting it next to a death trap. The older Resident Evil games are so confusing when it comes to those kind of things. But we have now obtained the security card, and we're going to use the security card to gain access to where Steve is. And let me explain how this is going to work. You can actually get past Steve entirely without using any of your weapons. And I definitely recommend it if you want to save your ammo. So, the movement you've got to do specifically for Steve is just so weird, and I don't quite understand why it's designed the way it is. But what you have to do is you have to stay in front of Steve for a second so that he does his vertical attack, and then you got to run behind him, and then run in a particular way so that when he starts to attack you, you can get past him, and he's just going to be attacking the wall, and straighten yourself out, and you'll be able to get past Steve, and he will never catch you. And now we're going to move on to the boss fight against Alexia, and we're going to attack Alexia 3 times. And every time she gets stunned, she is always going to do an attack. She will either do an acid attack or she will throw blood. The acid attack is fired in a straight line, so you can just dodge her by going to the side or just ducking using the knife hit. The blood attack is a long-range attack. She will never hit you with that blood attack, so long as you don't move into the blood on accident, and she will either do a straight blood attack or she will do a horizontal blood attack. And also, she has another attack where she grabs you and she sets you on fire, and that will instantly kill you. But the good thing about that attack is that she only does it when she is not in any other kind of attack animation. If she is in her acid attack animation, or she's using her blood attack, she cannot do that attack. So it affords you a lot of leeway to get away from her before she has a chance to do that. So you have to make sure you're timing your knife hits properly so that you don't accidentally get grabbed by that attack. And when it comes to the hit stun from the knife, you have to specifically knife her 3 times, as I've already mentioned, but for some reason at the very beginning of the fight, it takes 2 knife hits to stun her. That's the only exception to this fight. And you obviously want to knife her during the stun animation, so that for the next 2 knife hits, you will always get the stun. And as long as you take these different factors into account when it comes to dealing with this boss, she will die very fast. Obviously, the safest method to use against her if you don't want to use the knife is just to use the Magnum on her. The Magnum absolutely demolishes her, and like I said before, you can get additional Magnum rounds from that lion statue if you pick up the red jewel. But just demonstrating that knife-only strategy against her was one of the main objectives of this walkthrough, and I managed to satisfy it, thankfully. And I've died many times trying to perfect that strategy, so it's definitely not the best choice when it comes to doing a consistent no-damage strategy against her, but it's still a lot of fun to do. I definitely think that fight is designed for knife-only. I'm just glad that you can do a lot of the fights on this game knife-only. It really helps in saving up on ammo, and the fact that you're saving up on so much ammo that is almost completely unnecessary just allows you to be a lot more flexible with the kind of ammo you're going to be using against certain enemy types and bosses. You know, that's why in the previous video, I was using the grenade launcher very freely against the enemies, because of the fact that I did the plain tyrant knife-only. And it's definitely necessary that you do some of these bosses knife-only if you want to save up on ammo. There's a lot of really damage-spongy enemies in this game that really demand a lot of ammo. And I have a theory about the BOW gas grenades. So I read on the Wikipedia page for Resident Evil Code Veronica that the BOW grenades have the HP of enemies. So I wonder if the BOW gas grenades are pretty useful against the final boss. I'll have to test that out against the final boss when I get the chance. Oh, by the way, be very careful here. Do not run immediately. There's a zombie very close to you. It's a good thing that when I'm running straight, he can't actually grab me, which is really helpful. But obviously, you don't want to do that in a no-damage walkthrough because it makes it very easy to get hit by the second zombie. And that first zombie is still alive. Like, if you're not aiming directly for the head, the zombies take at least 3 shotgun shells before they finally go down, which is rather insane. And also, you might notice that when I'm aiming for the head, the zombies' heads aren't getting decapitated. This is because of censorship, because right around the time Resident Evil Code Veronica was being made, there was a murder involving decapitations, and Capcom didn't want to display any kind of insensitivity when it came to decapitations in this game. So what they did is they removed the decapitations of the zombies, but the zombies still died in one hit from the shotgun. Hideki Kamiya confirmed this in his interview with Christian Genestier when he was playing the original version of Resident Evil 2. And this censorship was eventually removed in the later installments of Resident Evil, after some time had passed. Which was pretty sad to hear, but let's not dwell on it, let's just get back into the game right now. So, we're doing this music box puzzle again, which I don't know why they're reintroducing this puzzle again, because it wasn't really that interesting the first time. But since we're coming very close to the end of the game, I guess they wanted to play this song one last time. Especially since, at the end, the Rockford Island for Claire section, that song played. So maybe they're just trying to follow a very similar theme with what they were trying to go for with that song. But we now have all the parts necessary to build the Dragonfly. We have the Dragonfly body, we have the Dragonfly wings, and we are now going to be able to gain access to the final boss fight. So take the path that I'm about to take right now, and we're going to be able to free Claire once we trigger the self-destruct sequence and trigger the final boss fight. And this is where the epic music is going to kick in. Yeah, you could definitely tell that this is the end of the game if they're playing such heroic music. Or as my friend likes to call it, the most anime music ever. This song is pretty cool. But go ahead and open up this file so that we can gain access to the security card again. Place the Dragonfly inside. And there are going to be 2 zombies in this room, so go ahead and finish them off. And you will get a checkpoint once you get to the terminal and you input the code Veronica. Pun intended, of course, since this is called Resident Evil Code Veronica. But the only problem with the checkpoint is that you have to constantly input the code every single time, and then you gotta watch the unskippable cutscene that plays after you input the code. But thankfully, since this is a walkthrough, I've just trimmed out that whole entire cutscene that plays after you input the code. And then the countdown will begin, and then the final boss fight shall commence. So, at the beginning, you have to shoot Alexia once to actually start the main boss fight. And you can shoot her with any weapon. You can even use a knife against her just to get started on the fight. And I always shoot her with the shotgun rather than with the bowgun, so that when I'm in the inventory, I can just swap to the bowgun and then I can just mash the quick turn button so I have plenty of time to get away. And I'm going to stand in this corner over here, shoot Alexia several times, and the moment I hear a baby spawn, I'm going to swap to the shotgun, and I'm going to look down, and I'm going to fire. Since the shotgun's a hit-scan-based weapon, it makes it very easy to hit these babies, unless they get very close to you, or they decide to do the jump attack. Those are the only 2 things that allow them to get past the shotgun. So you gotta make sure you're hitting them very early. But after firing that many shots at her, she proceeds to go into the final phase, and this is a very goofy phase, because you gotta wait until Alexia stops firing acid at you, and then you've got to aim the linear launcher properly. But the problem is that Alexia moves around so much, and the auto-aim doesn't help in adjusting the linear launcher. So you got to aim this thing manually if you want to hit her. And she always fires 4 acid shots, and I recommend doing this where you get her to be near the wall on her right, so that she's more likely to go to the left and dodge. But that is the end of the boss fight. And I'm just going to include this cutscene here, which I don't know why they always have to showcase the main character doing things that they can't do in-game. And then you also have this little moment where Chris is attacking Wesker, and it just looks so goofy. I just can't believe that Wesker, being as strong as he is, doesn't just kill Chris in one blow. There's no reason Chris should be surviving this. If this was Resident Evil 5, I could completely understand Chris surviving these blows, because he's built up quite a lot of physique, thanks to his intense training in Resident Evil 5. And the hits that Wesker is doing right now look so effeminate, and I'm honestly surprised that Chris just isn't on the ground with all his bones broken. Because look at this! There is no way a normal person should be able to survive that. I mean, just look at Chris. Chris looks so scrawny in this game. His physique does not allow him to survive any of Wesker's blows. Is Wesker just holding back intentionally just to toy with Chris? Just to showcase how useless Chris is? Well, you better continue what you're doing right now, Wesker, because all you're doing is assuring your own downfall by giving Chris a reason to motivate himself to become the kind of person he was in Resident Evil 5. And also, how convenient was that? Those girders just happened to be in the correct spot to allow Chris to stun Wesker for a little bit. And then this lucky pass moment coming up, where this explosion happens. Yet again, doesn't make any sense. How convenient. Wesker literally had Chris dead to rights. But enough about that. This is the end of my Resident Evil Code Veronica X no damage walkthrough. This is a fantastic Resident Evil game. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.
Next.